Howdy, this is Kryptonite Dragon, joined by Dante Zero, and this is the PodStation. Finally on the air.
Yay.
So, we're going to dive in. We're going to skip a lot of the usual pleasantries because I think we're both a little frustrated with some of the stuff we've been dealing with Twitch not working right for us today. So let's dive right in. Today we're going to be talking about E3. Lots to talk about. It's exciting stuff. It's coming tomorrow.
Well, officially it starts now, doesn't it?
Well,
really?
Yeah, officially it does, I guess. But all the broadcasts and everything, all the important stuff will be tomorrow, put it that way.
Yeah.
And for those of you in the U.S., I know Spike TV is going to be covering at least the first day. So if you have Spike TV and you're in the U.S., you could tune into a lot of that stuff. Appears at least they have the Microsoft press conference.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to echo that as well, the Sony-related stuff in Europe is actually being covered on the EU PlayStation blog. They'll have live streams, videos. We still don't know what's happening with regards to streaming to the Vita, but you'll be able to go on to the XMV on your PlayStation 3, and there should be an E3 icon. And you'll be able to click on that and it'll actually take you to all the latest video content that Sony pump out over the next 3 days. Yep. So it's not just a Sony press conference that you'll be able to watch live on your PS3 via the cross-media button, but you'll also be able to see interviews with developers and all sorts there, which is definitely going to be interesting because obviously all the reactions to PS4, so
yeah.
Plus, check it out.
Yeah, you can usually see the videos and stuff from E3 usually on PlayStation anyway. Typically that stuff is inside the store, every year. And then also don't forget PlayStation Home. You have a lot of ways you can visit to actually go to the E3 booths and stuff, the digital, PlayStation Home version of those. And sometimes they have special E3 suits and whatnot, and
no, there's definitely going to be some goodies on offer for people. I think there's a Last of Us theme dynamic thing that you can get that's exclusive. A Beyond Two Souls exclusive dynamic theme. There's also going to be a Destiny dynamic theme on there as well.
Awesome.
So I know the E3 space is actually in PlayStation Home at the moment, but you can't go into the main virtual tour of it. But if you sign up, and you can go into PlayStation Home, go to the E3 space and sign up for access during the week, you'll actually get a freebie as a result of that. And then obviously when the Sony press conference is about to go live, you'll be able to go in there and do all the little quests and have a look around the booths and, as I say, score some freebies, which is always good.
Yeah, my son went in a few years ago and got like an electrified suit, and I didn't log in and get it, and it's really cool too. I missed out on that one.
Yeah, there's been some cool stuff. As you say, you got the E3 suit. I think that was from a couple of years back, because I think last year they gave you like all kinds of weird hats and stuff. I've even got a virtual PS Vita and things, so the stuff they gave away last year was pretty cool, but I'm liking what they're doing with this one with dynamic themes and stuff. I think that's pretty cool. I think there's even a beta on offer for Killzone Mercenary. I'm not sure if that's applicable to the EU, but I know it's applicable to the US. That if you complete a certain action within the quests in the little space they've got, you're going to be able to get a beta code for Killzone Mercenary, which sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, cool.
So do check it out.
Yeah, PlayStation Home's got a lot more than people realize sometimes. I mean, there's often games associated with a lot of mini games associated with games that are coming out. And they can be really fun. They can give you a little bit of a heads up of what the game is about. And
we should also point out that we are going to be doing a lot, that's one way to sort of view all your E3 content, but the site's actually going to be doing a lot of other stuff as well, hopefully. So we're going to be sort of tweeting till our heart's content, all the latest stories on there. We'll try and get them up on the site as soon as possible. They won't be in depth to start off with, but obviously we'll fill them out as we get more info. We've got a special episode of the PodStation in the early hours of Tuesday morning, after the press conference, I believe. So there's also that as well. And then obviously IDP for Life's going to have his Trophy Lounge hopefully later on in the week as E3 rounds down. So, you know, it's not just the Sony guys that are doing their best to promote all their content through E3, but we're going to be doing our jobs as well. So do keep up to date with it, even if it's just watching our Twitter feed and clicking on stuff. It would be most helpful for us and for you.
Yes, and we have that Call of Duty Ghosts live stream. Not that they'll hear that in time, but it still may be playing.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, sadly we're missing out on that. We're making a small sacrifice for you guys.
Yeah, we're missing that. What's with that?
I don't know if that's a blessing or a...
Well, since we're not able to go live, I guess people don't have to worry about which one to choose to watch.
Yeah.
So...
Method in the madness. So...
E3. I've heard of this. Something about electronic entertainment or something? I don't know.
So first off, obviously, the elephant in the room, new consoles coming. We've already said everything that we can say about the Xbox One, and we've already kind of said everything we can say about PlayStation 4 to what we know about. But I'm curious, do you still feel the same kind of buzz from when we first saw the, you know, are you still buzzed to find out more about them over the course of E3, or do you think some of the things that have been going on in the run-up to E3 have actually killed some of that buzz a little?
I went through some like weird stages with this because I was like very excited. I heard about the Sony thing. I was like, wow, that's really cool innovation. Then I'm like, well, you know, what's Microsoft can bring to the table? I was excited that, you know, the prospect of getting, you know, the next Xbox. I was even kind of hanging on for some things with the names. You know, I bought some website URLs, for example, and, you know, I was looking forward to it being called Infinity. So, like, you know, I went through, like, I was kind of like, I was kind of hit in the face with that. And then, like, all the controversy over the Xbox and everything, you know, and it's still raging on. There's a lot of talk now about, you know, some problems with them downclocking some of the chips and things in there, and like I'm kind of like, I want to hear about some games already. I want to see some stuff. I want it, and then, you know, then the realization ultimately overall, it's like it's not even going to be released yet. We're going to get to see the PS4. I'm excited for that, but then it's like then I got to wait. Got to wait a long time. So it's
not too long though, but no, because I was going to say I'm the same with you in terms of, you know, there's a lot of excitement. I know it's been kind of weird watching this go on in the run-up because, you know, Sony had a fairly good showing in terms of the pre-E3 sort of conference to sort of say, yes, we're working on PS4, and they were heavily criticised because they never showed off the console. And, you know, as time's gone over the months, it's actually turned out to be quite a savvy, clever thing from Sony to do, because, you know, you look at the Microsoft press conference, you know, that it just went, and you just realise how much of a PR disaster that is, and yet the excitement, you know, any negativity about what Sony was saying has kind of gone out the window, and all Sony have really done is shown off about 4 or 5 games and a controller. And it makes me wonder about how these things are going to be handled in the future as well. You know, going past E3, and, you know, when we talk about other consoles in, you know, in a couple of years' time, like we did on the previous show, or even just big name games and stuff, or new attachments for your new console, it makes me wonder if these manufacturers like Sony and Microsoft are really going to sort of think about this a little bit more as a result of everything that's happened in the run-up to E3. I think for me personally, I'm still excited, but I think some of the things that the negativity has sort of quashed that a bit. Even with a new console reveal, because I find myself knowing now that I think that whatever Sony comes out and says tomorrow or early hours of Tuesday morning, I'm going to be okay with, and I'm going to be excited for that, but I'm going to be watching Microsoft with more interest, because I'm kind of curious of how much more can they go wrong with that. You know what I'm saying?
So it's like a car wreck. You can't look away.
Yeah, you can't look away, and it's like, even if you're not really interested in this buying the system or the stuff, you just, I mean, even now in the last couple of weeks, it's like I find myself sort of hanging my head in shame, thinking, why did I spend like an hour and a half watching that conference? And then I still find myself going and looking deliberately for stories on it just to see what else they're saying, because it just seems that every time Microsoft says something, it just gets fundamentally worse. and I think it's a strange kind of, it's kind of setting the tone for E3 to be kind of really strange. Because you'd expect the excitement, you know, after the fiasco that was the Wii U. You know, people were excited for the Wii U. The Wii U was announced. You know, it had a launch date and all this, and people found themselves really confused about whether or not Wii U was something they wanted to purchase last year. And you know, the big manufacturers didn't exactly set the world on fire at last year's E3. There were some nice surprises, but you know, for the most part, it was meh. It was okay, and so we were expecting this year to be a massive step up from all of them. And as we've discussed on previous PodStations, it just seems surprising that the direction that some people are taking, you know, Sony seem to have, you know, I don't want to be biased here, but Sony seem to have got it right in terms of slowly building up the hype to get people interested in a new console. But I can't help sort of looking at Nintendo and Microsoft and feeling, you know, even not as an owner of their systems, but as an all-round gamer, I feel so disappointed in the fact that in the way they've chosen to deal with things. You know, with all the horrible negativity that's being thrown at Microsoft, and for once it's rightly so, because they're not doing themselves any favour, and then Nintendo not even really showing up or doing anything of note other than inviting people to come to talk to them at their booth. And I just think it's very strange, and that's kind of letting me a little bit down with the excitement levels. Did you find that at all yourself?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you know, I see some of what you're talking about with like kind of not being able to look away, but because I've been definitely doing that. I've been like all over, you know, stories and everything like that to keep up with stuff, probably more than I would normally would for Xbox, considering our focus. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm at this point, I'm just like, I want to hear about the games, and I want to get excited for them, because I'm used to waiting on games. I'm not used to waiting on a console, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of, you know, it feels exciting to I want to see what it looks like, but then it's also going to be anticlimactic, because then it's like, well, I got to wait a few more months before it's even out. So, you know, I don't know.
So we should probably get into the game side of things.
Definitely.
You know, before we start looking at individual publishers and developers in terms of their games, is there any specific title that you really want to see more of, that you already know about?
Destiny.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That surprised me, actually.
Really?
I wouldn't have had you pegged down for Destiny, but yeah, I think Destiny's going to be fascinating as well.
Well, yeah, I've seen a little bit of the, you know, the pre-teaser stuff and all that, and yeah, definitely. I don't know if, you know, if you've heard, but I was a little bit disappointed in the Last of Us demo.
Yeah, it was only 15 minutes long. I mean, they were excellent 15 minutes. Let's be honest, they were excellent 15 minutes, but it's just a bit too short. I think it's fine. I think it's safe to say that when the Last of Us copy arrives in your hand and you actually sit down and play it, I think you'll be happy with that.
Yeah, but I mean, okay. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that change the way I view coming games, and like what I like about them, and what interests me. So, you know, it's okay to change your taste and say, well, you know, I thought that game was going to be good, or I thought that was going to be kind of lame, and then it turns out to be awesome. You know, it's one of those things. It's like there's a whole mix of things, like what other people think of it, trophies, you know, the gameplay style, what genre it is. All those things have a play into how it fits with certain people. Now, you play a lot of different games, but I'm more selective and stuff, especially now. I don't play games just for trophies anymore. So, I'm trying to narrow my focus and make sure I really like a game before I get it.
Yeah, well, I think you're right in terms to be excited about Destiny. I think the thing that stands out with Destiny, more so than the fact that it's actually coming from Bungie, is just some of this persistent online, always online world that changes, but it's still a single player experience. I'm really intrigued to see, how that kind of works, and the gameplay that's involved with that, because it's kind of, the way I understand it is, it's sold on the basis of it will be like an MMO. It will just be like a single player MMO, which is kind of weird when you say it, because it's a contradiction. How can you have single player MMO? So I'm kind of curious to see how Bungie are going to make that work. I think it'll be interesting to see more of Destiny as well during Sony's press conference, because it is worth pointing out that Destiny is only the first step. This is actually a 10-year project for Bungie and Activision. So what we're actually seeing is we're going to be seeing the start of things to come, more so. And I think that's really intriguing for me about Destiny. I think also this the fact that it's going to be on PS3 and PS4 as well. It'll be interesting to see, how the cross-platform side of things will work with that. If you own both systems. And I'm also intrigued by this whole mobile application thing as well. I'm starting to see and hear a lot more from developers about them making applications that you can access on your mobile phone, which has a real-world integration. And I do remember a game that was announced at E3 many years ago and subsequently cancelled, which is called The Agency. And it's kind of, if you think of where we are at now, where developers are championing this, have a dedicated app on your phone and we can send you alerts from in the game to your phone, and you sort of think back to this game Agency, which was saying, yes, you could send text messages backwards and forwards that would have an impact in the game, that when you fired up your PS3 it would have, the game world would have changed as a result of what you sent back in your text message. And it's weird to think that game that seems way ahead of its time got cancelled, and now it's kind of the big buzzword this year round. Do you not think there's a lot of buzz between these whole, not just having the brand new games, but the way we interact with them even further outside of the console cycle?
Yeah, and that's go back to me and my style again. It's also a little frightening because well, you know how I am about it, the whole technology thing, and if you make something too much involving too many different things, then it's like, and it's a consistent part of the gameplay, then you're kind of ruining the standard way a game works. Putting a disc in, and I've got a controller, and who wants to have to use other devices? Who wants to have that enhance other people's gameplay? And if you don't care about it,
well, having said that, I mean, I was looking at a PS4 game that was announced earlier this week, and it was called Warface, I think it is. The name escapes me off the top of my head, but they were talking about the app, and I thought actually it was pretty cool. They've got grand plans for this app that comes with the game, and the game itself is actually free to play as well. But the cool thing about the app is it's not going to affect your gameplay too much, in the fact that the application will tell you if there's new missions, new rewards going on in the game, and then send you an alert. So, for example, if you're at work, in your 9-to-5 job, and you get a text message on your phone that says, there'll be some new quests this evening, you can get these awesome rewards, and you've got no plans for your evening, I think that's kind of nice to have.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, there's a lot of games that do in-game events, double XP or bonus weapons or extra treasure, like Borderlands 2, for example, and Defiance. They do all those kinds of things, but it's really hard to try and communicate that to everybody. And even with Facebook and Twitter, these companies putting that information on Facebook and Twitter, it's still very hard for them to get people to come on and take advantage of those extra in-game things. And I think an app for a game that you're interested in is a good way of doing that.
Yeah. But see, I mean, you're taking it out of the realm of Facebook and Twitter, and then, if other games keep Facebook and Twitter, and then you've got 20 different games that you're playing, you've got 20 different alert systems. You see my point? And it becomes an overwhelming interference with your...
I don't think it's overwhelming, I think it's, personally speaking, I think it's easier to manage. And there's still stuff that we've yet to hear in terms of Sony's UI and interface. But, how good would it be if you got an alert through an application for a Sony-based game, and then you could put that event in your calendar on your phone and manage it that way?
Yeah.
Do you not think that would be cool?
Maybe if you were really into the game and that was your main game, I could see that, some of the
Well, no,
stuff...
I mean, it even works with multiple games. If you've got multiple games and you're able to schedule them from the game's application on your phone, I think that's brilliant for actually managing your game time better. I genuinely do. I think that'd be interesting to see. But let's think of some more games here, because obviously you mentioned Destiny.
I was just thinking about something from TV. It was a show I was watching. This guy was like, "I would have helped you move, and with whatever you were doing." I forget what the show was. He's like, "But I had a World of Warcraft mission we had to do."
Yeah. Sounds like
I would have helped you, but I had a World of Warcraft mission scheduled.
Yeah. But so other games that we're obviously going to see at E3. Obviously, we're going to see more of The Last of Us, because it's obviously due out, this
Real
Friday coming. We'll obviously see more of Beyond Two Souls. We kind of have to see more of that, because it's, it's funny actually, because obviously you've seen all the review scores for The Last of Us. It's getting really good scores, and they're sort of saying that's the swan song. That's going to be the true masterpiece that celebrates the end of the PS3. And I think actually that's a load of BS. I actually think Beyond Two Souls will be the one to be the masterpiece for it, because. Obviously I can't say, having not played The Last of Us the full game, I'm sure it's a fantastic game. I'm really, I'm like you, I'm really looking forward to it. But it's still a game, and I think, in terms of what the Naughty Dog are trying to do, they still have, they're still not pushing as much boundaries as they could be. And I think, whereas David Cage, on the other hand, is really trying to push the boundaries of storytelling, and the game, the things like the gameplay don't necessarily become important at that point. And I think,
it's hard to tell without the games being out, though, which story is going to be, epic, or the most epic.
But I think, in terms of the final swan song, I think. I do think Beyond Two Souls is probably going to be the final song for PS3 this year, I think.
In one sense, you've got The Last of Us, which is doing the post-apocalyptic thing, which has been played out many a time. And, from a standpoint of somebody that likes the post-apocalyptic storylines, I can say Beyond Two Souls' story is more creative, I would say, in that sense. It's
because it's not been done to death.
Yeah, it's not something that you've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about, she's essentially, the whole idea is that there's, another soul or something inhabiting her persona. So yeah, I mean, that's not something that you've seen. So I would say in that sense it's more creative. And then we also know, obviously, about, all the voice acting and all that stuff being just stellar. So, well, you may be right. I would say I'd be leaning towards Beyond Two Souls being a more superb and unique story than The Last of Us.
Yeah. But, one of the other things I was going to say when we sort of think of some of the games as well, is, what I'm really glad to see this year's E3. I'm glad to see the horror genre is really coming back in abundance. Just this last week we've had a number of announcements of exciting horror games for both PS3 and PS4. And I'm actually really glad to see them going back to their roots, because we've kind of gone through this phase where, when Resident Evil 5 came out, it was more action orientated, and so other similar games to Resident Evil that have been around for a while, like, the Silent Hill stuff, started to move towards that more action orientated, and, Resident Evil 6 again was more action orientated as well. And I'm glad to see that developers are now starting to say, well, actually, no, we really want to go back to what, we've got all this graphical power. We really want to like get back to that point of where we're sending, somebody's playing a game and we want to make them hide behind a couch when they do that. And Sony have some great first party and third party support in that. We talked a little before about Techland's new game Dying Light, which was the open world zombie based game, but there was where you could do free running and stuff like that. Do you remember that one?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and but one of the interesting things with it is the whole day-night cycle in an open world. So it's like you would have to strategically plan when you go and do your runs to get supplies and fight your battles, because obviously if you did it in the middle of the night, you're more likely to be more vulnerable and exposed.
Yep.
But obviously,
now zombies don't like to come out.
Yeah, but I'm guessing there'll be some sort of gameplay mechanic that will ensure that you don't just keep going out for supplies in the day. So that will, I'm sure Techland have built some like a safety net in there to make sure that everybody's not just going out during the day when there's no zombies about. But that sort of risk reward system is coming back, and what I like about it as well is that some of the games that have been announced that are doing this kind of risk reward system are doing it in a very different way to the likes of Dark Souls and Demon Souls. Those games had great risk reward systems. The only problem with it is they were so hard. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That you would have to fight so hard as part of the risk reward system. And I think that was a shame, because it then turned people off. But I'm glad to see that other developers are taking on that. Well, actually the risk reward system works pretty well in the horror genre, let's do that, but do it not a case of where you're having to grind souls for 8 hours so you can move on to the next part, but where we make it like people really want to be scared. So as I say, obviously we've seen Dying Light, and I'm trying to remember what the other one was called. It was called Daylight, which is actually a PS4 exclusive, and we don't actually know that much about it. And it's coming from Atlas, which obviously, for those that know Atlas, they do a lot of quirky Japanese games, and they sort of bring them across to the West, and they do all the JRPGs, and it's kind of a new direction for them as a publisher to actually be publishing not only an exclusive, but a horror game as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do you think classifies a horror game? Because it's not a true genre. You either have, horror, sci-fi, horror shooter, horror,
Well, I don't know, because of the horror. Well, I don't know. For me, a horror game is something that.
Do you get into those? Do they actually?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I remember the old days of like Silent Hill 2 and stuff. And the original Resident Evils, and they were scary games. And since then, we've just sort of gone on this evolution where it's then become, throw zombies or tens of bad guys and put you in a closed space, and let's put pre-scripted jump scenes in there. And it's actually one of the reasons I'm actually looking forward to this Atlas exclusive and want to know a little bit more about it, because one of the things they've said with Daylight is that they're aware that a lot of the sort of horror genre games these days have all been based on small scares, and once you've gone through it once, you kind of know it's coming. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know it's going to be coming again. The next time you play it. With Dying Light, the developers are actually working on the system itself so that every time you log into the game, the world around you will change, so that you won't have these pre-scripted scares. So what may scare you in a 4-hour gaming session on Daylight, you may turn it off, come back the following day, and that same scare that you got the previous day isn't going to be there. It's going to be something completely different and catch you off guard. And that's what I want to see from horror games again, because even in the early days when, as I say, games were scary like Silent Hill 2 and Resident Evil, they still had those scripted jump moments. And and it's kind of nice to see them bringing them back, but then evolving it more, which is something they seem to have got a bit confused of over the years, because I would have liked to have seen it evolve to that point, but then we ended up with things like Dead Space 2 and 3, which were more sort of action orientated, and Resident Evil that was, you know, going off on a tangent and stuff. So I'm really excited to see those kinds of games make a comeback at E3 this year. I think for me they're going to be the standout ones as well.
I've never been a fan of horror movies or horror video games or anything ever. Can you believe that? But I would say Resident Evil 3 was probably like one of my favorite video games of all time. And it wasn't, you know, it wasn't necessarily like any, I don't know, I don't get the whole jumpy, scary, something jumps out and it's like, okay.
Yeah, but when you go and watch a horror film, you want it to be scary, and it's kind of like, you know.
I do, but I've never watched a horror film since all the way back when I was a kid watching Alien when the pod jumped on the guy's face. That's like the only time I've ever jumped in a horror movie, and like since then I watch horror movies and they're stupid.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You know,
he's gonna kill her. What do I care? It's a movie.
Horror games have kind of followed the example of horror movies, in which they've become predictable. Mm-hmm. You know, you kind of watch one horror movie and, you know, you'll see several horror movies that come out that are similar in nature, and then it's kind of like, well, you know, they're all essentially doing the same kind of thing, just the same kind of technique, just with different characters and different backgrounds, and it gets very predictable. In fact, the only saving grace of the Saw movies, for example, was because they were clever. You didn't care about whether or not people got killed in these.
Yeah, you were kind of like, oh, that's cool. That's a cool way to die.
Yeah, you were kind of like, actually, you know, that's a really clever story. Everything else was just, you sort of look at it and you think, wow, that's a bit cheesy, really. But you know, there is really clever writing, and you can see with the Saw movies that the writing shines through with it. But the rest of the movies are just like, well. Do I really care? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I never got like an increased pulse rate. I played Saw, I watched Saw movies. My heartbeat would never go up. But I would say like things that get me are like doing some of the jumps in Uncharted, where you're jumping from a cliff to like grab by your fingertips. Yeah. I would always kind of be on the edge of my seat, like, you know, it's it's hard to explain, but like horror doesn't do it for me. But things like that always did, because it's like, I don't want my character to fall.
Yeah, but you know, with Uncharted, it's like if Drake falls, it's like, oh well, I'm just going to have to replay this section again. So it'd be kind of nice if you had games where, you know, like the sort of thinking behind the Wii U exclusive, which was called Zombie U, which is where when your character died, that was it, and you'd have to go back and create another character. You know, I'd like to kind of see that creep in a bit.
That'd be a different kind of tension, though. That's what I mean. I think it's
Yeah, but it makes you value the life a bit more, rather than trying to sort of bash your way through to.
And that's true. That's what's missing in a lot of video games. How can you care if you respawn 100 million times? You just don't.
I tell you, it's certainly missing from Call of Duty Ghosts, which, you know, is obviously going to have a huge showing at E3. I mean, obviously we mentioned there's a live stream going on as we speak, or if you're listening to this, you know, later on in the week, there was a live stream that was going when we were recording this, so, and you missed it, so ha. But yeah, I think Call of Duty, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how they tackle that as well, because, you know, the impression I got from the initial reveal trailer at the Microsoft press conference was they were going for an emotional tone. They did want players to care about the fact that, you know, even if they're going to respawn like 1,000 times or whatever, they did want people to actually care about the characters. I'm just not quite sure how they're actually going to be able to pull that off, and certainly do want to see that.
No saves, and if you die, you have to restart the entire game.
Yeah. But then are we not going into the difficult, rather than caring about the characters, are we not then going into the more difficult gameplay that you find in Dark Souls and stuff? So, you know, because see, that's the only downside with games like Demon Souls and Dark Souls, is that you kind of stop caring about your character because you just want to live. And I think that's a bit of a shame, actually, because I kind of want to do both. I want to care about my character enough to actually make them want to live. So you know, it'd be interesting to see that. That's another sort of dark horse in terms of big games for E3. I think Dark Souls 2 will definitely be one for people to look out. You know, these are games that we know about, and stuff. And it's good to see Square Enix coming back as well in full force. I don't know if you know too much about JRPGs. I know you're an RPG fan, but not so much Eastern-based RPGs, is it?
Well, you know, I would say I just haven't tried that many of them.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not gonna give them a bad rap, but you know, my impression of some of the Japanese RPGs is there's a lot more menus and things like that, and you know, also they tend to swing towards more of like the anime type characters and things in my mind.
Well, we'll cover both sides of that because I just wanted to go on a little rant about Square Enix that they've finally got rid of some of the stupid higher ups there who think that it's okay to announce a game and then 7 years later still not be announced. You know, 7 years later they're still announcing announcements to talk about the game that they're not going to announce they're going to release for another couple. It just gets so mediocre, it's pointless, and I'm glad they've finally got somebody at the top that's saying, you know what, we're going to actually invite the press here, we're going to tell them where we are actually at with development. You know, I think some members of the press recently went to Square Enix and they were sort of asking about the progress, and the developers were actually even able to give them percentages of where they are at finishing the game. And, you know, that's a lot more information than we've had about some of Square Enix's more popular RPGs than we've had in a long time. You know, and it's good to see Square Enix coming back. I think, you know, surprisingly enough, the last couple of months, Square Enix has been quite quiet about the new Final Fantasy 13 Lightning Returns game, and I'm actually glad to see that's making shockwaves at E3 this year with new trailers and stuff, because it's actually looking really, really good. Say what you will about the first two games, but it's looking fantastic. And I think, you know, when you combine the fact that Kingdom Hearts 1.5 HD is coming out in the West, you've got the Final Fantasy 10 and 10.2 HD collections on both Vita and you know, PS3, and then obviously there's an unannounced Square Enix project, which we'll probably find out more at E3. Kind of makes me excited to see what Square Enix have to offer. And I mean, that's just on the Final Fantasy side of things. That's not even taking into account whether or not we'll get a new Tomb Raider, a new Hitman, and all the other sort of things that Square Enix have the fingers in. So it'd be interesting to see what they bring. I was interestingly enough going to say, because I know you don't like your sort of Japanese RPG based things, are you going to be tuning in tomorrow for EA's conference? Because I did see earlier that there was a tweet about this, that EA and BioWare tomorrow during a press conference are actually going to be revealing more about the future of Dragon Age.
Yeah, I'm tuning into them no matter what. I mean, you know, I still want to hear what's going on with these major developers and publishers, and I actually, you know, I've thought about this. You know, if past E3s, I'd like to see even some more developers and publishers have bigger conferences and actually make some announcements, because it seems like, you know, you always have the big ones.
Yeah.
At least that make it onto, you know, broadcasts and stuff like that, and then the rest are, you know, just like press conferences that you would see throughout the year. You know, they're kind of like, It would be nice.
Well, I don't know. I mean, they have been getting better, and I mean, this year we're kind of spoiled for choice in press conferences. I mean, we've already had a pre E3 Konami press conference. We've got a pre-E3 Activision conference with the Call of Duty stuff. But, you know, over the course of the week, you know, Konami is still going to be having a press conference. Ubisoft are going to be there in abundance.
But those don't hit the you know, they're not video broadcasts or anything like that.
They are. They were.
You don't see them. You don't see them. Where do you find them? You get the major announcements. It's like American TV is going to show.
To give out other website addresses, because it can do.
Well, no, I'm saying your average gamer doesn't go out hunting for them.
Yeah,
they're not a major cornerstone of E3, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're right in terms of you do have to look a little, but I wonder if that's because of some of the appeal that some of these have.
So who are we going to see? Who are we going to see? What's the main ones tomorrow? EA.
EA, Microsoft,
Activision,
Ubisoft, and Sony.
Ubisoft. So you can't think of any others that you'd like to see, like, let me think of what's a good example.
Well, I know there are some others coming during the week that that I'll no doubt be tuning into. Things like press conferences from NIS and Atlas. Obviously, we know Rockstar aren't going to be at E3. I'd love to watch a Rockstar E3 press conference.
I'd rather see Rockstar over Ubisoft.
Yeah, but they're not turning up, so what can you do? Rockstar are big enough to that point of where they don't need to turn up. So,
what do you mean big enough they don't need to turn up?
Because they just have to tweet an image of GTA 5 and the internet blows up. There's very few games that achieve that.
I'm a gamer. I want to see this stuff same as everything else.
Yeah, but Rockstar would rather have you come to their website and do it on their terms as opposed to go to E3, spend lots of money and not do it. I'm with you in terms of I would like to see Rockstar at E3 again.
I like to see all these big publishers and developers just come up there and show. I mean, this is the time to do it. Get it broadcast. Have a, G4 used to do something here before they went off the air or changed their mode. But used to be you could see like 5 days of E3 or something like that, and you could see each one of the different press conferences if you chose to, and that stuff's going by the wayside. That's what I mean. Like, what's wrong with having Bethesda have a conference and having Rockstar have a conference and is it about the games? Is it always about Sony and Microsoft?
Well,
once you have a console, this is an exception this year. Obviously, new consoles coming out, but.
Yeah. No,
see some games.
I think from my perspective, I'd like to see the coverage go more mainstream in terms of it not just being related to game sites let's be honest, you guys have Spike TV in the US, but Spike TV makes no bones about the fact that it's gamer-centric type of TV, and what I would actually like to see, for example, certainly here in the UK is, say, like ITV doing, ITV here in the UK, a commercially sponsored channel. They have like 6 different channels available on free to air. I can't understand why one of those channels can't be, dedicated to the coverage of everything going on at E3, even if it goes into the early hours of the morning, because then it puts coverage out there for gamers to watch on normal TV without necessarily having to go through all kinds of complicated channels to track it down, but at the same time also has that appeal for those that aren't gamers to try and draw them in. It's all right promoting your product to every gamer on the planet, as we've mentioned before. You can say, yay, GTA 5's coming out, announce it, and that's great for gamers. Everybody's going to get dead excited for that if you're a gamer. What if you're not a gamer? Is that saying, well, people that don't necessarily game shouldn't be drawn in somehow, some way, because that's the only way it's going to grow, isn't it? You want to target those people as well, not just the existing audience that you have. That's the one downside to E3 every year. It seems to target existing gamers, which is great, and you've got manufacturers targeting each other's audiences to try and get customers on their platform as opposed to the other platform. The same with games, but you don't see enough of them trying to think outside the box, because they could be drawing in more of an audience from people that aren't normally gamers, aren't considered gamers and stuff. And I think the guys behind E3 really need to look at that part of their coverage as well going forward.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a big disconnect there. I think it's gaming's a big part of entertainment. Let's face it. Look at what movies, the exposure they get, and television, and the award shows they have, and they broadcast everything, and we just need something like that for games. We need something. We need some television stations for games.
Yeah, and I think E3 is a perfect sort of place to really bring all those kinds of ideas together, and I don't get why they don't do that.
The other thing is, I was thinking the other day how even games that are R-rated, how they're so they still walk a careful line compared to movies, don't you think?
Yeah.
They really do. I mean, you know, with the violence and nudity and all those things, it's like some of the stuff Rockstar did with, like, you know, with the hot coffee and those things.
Well, they didn't do that, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, with the controversy that stirred, and it's like
Manhunt stuff, yeah.
mature rated games, and you know, for adults, and it stirred so much controversy. Yet some of the things that are in movies, and it all speaks to, like, I wish the gaming industry would move to the next level. It's almost like the industry needs to grow up and come together, not try to do their each own individual things, but also do some things as an industry to push everyone forward.
Yeah.
You know?
I certainly would like to see that more.
Sony Television. Sony did all the things with the channels and everything. Wouldn't it be great if they had one of their channels was just dedicated purely to games, publishers and video games that were coming, and just nothing but that? That would be awesome.
I mean, there's enough developer diaries out there, and you know, whenever there's a work commencing on a new game, you can guarantee there's going to be some kind of, you know, video camera crew going around the studios, you know, interviewing people and stuff. So, you know, there's definitely the content there to fill up channels to do stuff like that. It's just strange that, and there's the other aspect of it, and dare I come back to it, but the whole Xbox One thing, right? They talked about TV. Yeah, there was no sort of gaming TV there. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, why don't you put a gaming TV channel on?
Yeah, Microsoft gaming channel. Absolutely, you're right. And stream something like that via, you know, Xbox Live and have a. And
if not, you know, even
that
if
would
you
actually
don't
be
have
a great idea.
And even if you don't have an Xbox One or an Xbox 360 or whatever, that you can still get that as part of your cable or satellite subscription.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can actually see what it is, you know, as a non-gamer, you can see what it is you're missing out on. And, you know, because it's strange how, you know, even now there's certain games, like for example, I remember a few years back playing Uncharted. I'd come home from Sheffield, where I was living at the time, to play. You know, I was playing away and playing Uncharted, and even my dad was drawn into it. And I just think, you know, he was so drawn into that he made me actually finish the entire game, and I didn't get to bed till like 2-3 a.m. in the morning because he wanted to actually see what happens in the end. But and I know it's kind of biased that that's PS3 exclusive, but you kind of have to wonder that, you know, if a game like Uncharted can draw people in, you know, okay, so you're not really drawn in by the action adventure, but what if you're a logical person and you like puzzles and stuff with invigorating stories, you know, and you catch a glimpse of footage of a game that's doing that kind of thing, you know, and that may persuade you to go and purchase this system. I can see more pros for having gaming-based TV channels as opposed to not having them at all, or simply relying on things like YouTube and stuff.
Well, even if you took, you know, YouTube's a great resource for, you know, pulling people together that have dedicated channels to different things and putting them up as a television channel. So, I mean, even if you did something, you know, just like indie games, you know how indie games get support from Sony. What if they did the same thing? What if let's say Netflix did the same thing and supported different kind of, you know, channels where a person that's a Netflix subscriber, for example, could stream a channel that was like all gaming, and it was an amalgamation of all things YouTube, video gaming, you know, selected channels and stuff, you know, whatever, you know. But there's just a lot of things it seems like we could see that some company somewhere could pull that together. And if the gaming industry just came together and had some kind of...
It's just weird that these things don't occur as a result of E3. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
But we've digressed a little bit, so we should probably get back into
the answer is I just have to get tickets to E3 and just go and...
Yeah. Press passes. Yes, please.
Yes, please. Then I won't care.
What was I going to say? So let's go through some of the publishers and sort of you know, you can say what you're looking forward to seeing them reveal tomorrow. Obviously, we'll start off with the elephant in the room, because obviously they've had a tough year. They're coming back though, and obviously that's EA.
EA.
Obviously tomorrow we're going to see FIFA The new Madden as
There's
usual.
a lot of sports stuff.
Dragon Age 3, possibly. The new Need for Speed.
You think they're going to talk about the whole online pass? You think they're going to...
I don't think they will talk about that very much, to be honest with you. I think, I still think people are directing anger at EA wrongly so, because, EA have come out and fairly so in the last couple of weeks and said we're scrapping online passes.
Yeah, but don't you think that's a positive that they'll kind of tout at E3 and be like, look what we're doing now, we're going to do this for you, and we listen to you.
Yeah, but the problem is there is the tendency that if they come out and say that and go on about it too much at their press conference, that it could sound like they're actually doing us a favour. And, I don't want EA to go down that road at all. I don't want them to think that they're doing us a favour, so that then means they can charge us more for stuff. Do you see what I'm saying? That there are implications there. I just want EA to come out tomorrow and sort of say, here's some great, fantastic looking games and get excited about them. I was just going to say, is there any sort of particular EA game that you're, that we know is coming from EA that you're particularly excited about, or do you actually want to see some new surprise EA announcements? I don't know, maybe like Mirror's Edge 2, for example.
No, I didn't play Mirror's Edge. I did try that game, and that wasn't for me. I tried that. I gave that game a shot, but I was like, eh.
Yeah, it's made me turn to YouTube, and YouTube was my best friend for about 4 weeks.
All those times, gotta beat the times.
Yeah, we got there in the end, but I don't know, I'm kind of excited to see if there is going to be a Mirror's Edge 2. I really do want to see EA and DICE go back to that, because that was it's not everybody's cup of tea, but even if there was certain points you don't like the time trials and stuff, there was enough of a game and a story and an intriguing world that you could build upon it. So while the first game may not have been catered to everybody's taste or been, a world beater in terms of scores, there's still enough content to sort of go, well, how can we make this better? And, given how far DICE and EA have come over the last couple of years with new IPs and, stuff like that, I think, Mirror's Edge 2, certainly in the next year or so is the perfect time to do it, really.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we're talking about Frostbite 3 running on PS4 and the next generation consoles and stuff. That's powering the new Need for Speed, which, I know Need for Speed is out every year these days, but I think I'm certainly excited for Need for Speed Rivals to see how that new engine's going to work. Are you excited for Battlefield 4 at all?
A little bit, yeah. I might give those a shot. I did try Battlefield 3, and I've, I used to play a lot of games outside of Call of Duty. I really did a lot of shooters. So, anytime there's a new one in the scopes, absolutely you're gonna give them a look. I just, EA seems so sports oriented to me. I don't like the sports games too much. I'd like to see them do a lot more things. Be involved with, some RPGs, things like that. Mass Effect I loved Mass Effect.
Well, we mentioned, obviously, that they have said about Dragon Age Inquisition, info coming out of that. That'll be interesting to see if EA do anything about Mass Effect 4 as well, whether or not there'll be any information about that, or whether they'll say...
BioWare, I played BioWare games on PC, I'm a big fan of them, so...
I tell you what would be interesting to see from EA in terms of surprise announcements beyond Mirror's Edge 2. I'd be interested to see if, because we know obviously
some SimCity stuff.
Well, no, not SimCity can stay off my console, thank you. But, because of all the DRM stuff, but we won't go into that because it's a topic for another day. But what I'm intrigued about is, with all the talk about these free-to-play MMOs, we've seen Sony announce a few this week and stuff like that with the PS4. I'm curious as to whether or not BioWare are actually realistically thinking about bringing Knights of the Old Republic across.
Yeah, true.
We're starting to see more and more PC games come across, the likes of Diablo 3, for example, from Blizzard, and I don't know, I think, Knights of the Old Republic would be a nice surprise announcement to actually come on to PSR, and I think there's definitely an audience for it, especially with the renewed interest in
Yeah,
Star Wars.
renewed interest Star Wars. There's gonna be new Star Wars movie. That just won't
So-
die, will it? The 70s
Damn
until
you,
now,
Disney.
Star Wars is still.
But yeah, so I think Mirror's Edge 2 and Knights of the Old Republic coming onto console would be fantastic surprise announcements. But I think EA have enough substance in their press conference tomorrow to actually make it at the least watchable, at the most quite exciting, I think.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you play sports games? Do you play FIFA and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm a big FIFA fan.
Really?
I still haven't picked up this year's FIFA 13. I sort of was taking a little break from it, but I do like my EA Sports, and I've got to be honest with you. You can say what you want about the yearly releases, but when you look at a game like FIFA, for example, over the last 3 or 4 years, every game has been a step up from the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it should be. EA in the past have got away with doing, essentially releasing the same game just with different names in it, and not tweaking anything or, changing the graphics or really changing the focus of the game. With FIFA series over the last couple of years, it's gone from strength to strength, and the buying it on a yearly basis has totally been justified. And I can't say too many other people that I know have been disappointed with their yearly purchases of FIFA, for example.
Yeah. Well, all those sports games kind of go through that too. Madden went through that a little bit.
Yeah.
Real football.
But I think FIFA's certainly the one that's showing the most promise, I think, overall, because as a result of the improved quality and the way they're doing things with the FIFA, I mean, every year the record is breaking sales records in the US and topping itself every year.
Yeah.
That's a country that's not predominantly known for its interest in soccer, yet the sales numbers keep going up, so obviously EA are doing something right with that. My only concern with the sports games that EA do is on portable platforms. I recently, as you know, won a copy of FIFA 13, and it's essentially a port of FIFA 12, which is actually pretty bad, and it's still missing some features. I look at the PS Vita in terms of its internet connectivity and stuff like that, and the fact that it's lacking certain mainstays like the Ultimate Team stuff and the card trading game things, and the multiplayer offering is pretty basic. And then they're just relying on touchscreen controls. I think it's not to say that FIFA on the Vita is a bad game. It's just not the best game it could be.
No, how do you feel about the whole X-Bone exclusive content and all that other stuff? Does that?
I genuinely do not care about the Final Fantasy. I genuinely do not care about the fantasy leagues because that's great if you are a die-hard sports fan in the real world. But
So you think that's going to be a big negative for gamers? You think they're going to be like, you think most feel like you, or are they going to be like turned off by that, or not care, or?
I can't speak for everyone on it, but I know for me certainly it's a turn off, because I think to myself, I've just spent like 40 quid on buying a FIFA game. That's my escape. That's my fantasy football. Why do I need a snap-on, table thing when I'm watching real life football to help me manage my fantasy football, when really what I could be doing is sat down with my Vita playing FIFA while watching real football on the TV. It just seems unnecessary to have the fantasy football leagues. I don't think I don't think fantasy leagues of any sport are really that popular enough to warrant that kind of
No, they're pretty huge here. I mean, Madden and football in the United States has a huge fantasy, sports team following. But I don't know, like if people are gonna.
You play Madden though. Do you really?
If you're a true sports fan, will you know the difference? Will you know, like, or you just hear that Microsoft has extra content and not really know that and think that, well, I got to buy a Microsoft console over a Sony console because it's got more sports stuff and I'm a sports guy.
Well, I don't know. For me personally, I feel it's unnecessary. It doesn't evolve or add anything for me personally, and I think the other downside is it kind of opens the door to be potentially screwed financially with some of the perks that you may have to pay for. And I think, in fairness, I think sports fans get a bum deal whichever sport you're in, because quite often, a lot of the time, that sports fans get screwed over with having to pay, an extra premium to watch it on a specific channel, for example. And I think, that's bad enough. And now you're going to have, a console manufacturer supplying extra services that, supposedly add to the overall experience, which, are inevitably going to cost more money. And I think that's a little bit unfair. Why do you need to be that die-hard to, why do I need more of these products even though I'm a die-hard fan?
Well, we'll just have to see how that affects sales, especially going forward. If you're choosing a new generation of console, and I mean, because FIFA is arguably the largest game in the world, sports game and stuff, and we know how important football is to Americans. I don't know.
But all being said, I think EA are set for a good show tomorrow. I just hope that people can get over some of the negative stuff, like being voted worst company and things like that. And I really want to see EA.
Was that like 2 years ago? Everybody still talks about.
No, that was this year, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't this
last year. No, they won the worst company in America last year and this year.
I didn't think it was this year.
Yeah, they've won that twice.
I thought it was like 2011, 2010.
No, they've won it 2 years in a row, and I think EA is still doing what they are best known for, but they're doing it in a more positive approach to it, and they're trying to get rid of some of this negativity. And I think too long EA have taken this attitude of, well, we don't give a monkeys if you hate us because you're still buying this product. And it's kind of nice to see EA turn that around a little bit more, which is, well, we're still going to put these products on, but we are taking your feedback. Look, we can prove we're taking your feedback, we're implementing it here and here, and show examples of that. And I think that's the way that EA need to go forward with it, and so that gamers can concentrate on the most important thing when it comes to EA, which is their games being of a high quality. I think it's safe to say that quite a few EA games have not reached the quality, the bare minimum quality over the last couple of years, and I think it's nice to see them addressing that focus again. So I think we're going to be in for maybe a few surprises from EA tomorrow, but I think for the most part, I think we can take comfort knowing that the stuff that they regularly produce is going to be looking good, and it's definitely worth getting excited for. I'm going to say that with EA.
Cool. Let's talk. Let's see who. Ubisoft.
I was going to say next up, Ubisoft. Yeah.
Ubisoft.
Dear, oh dear.
So I think we're all going to mention. We're just going to say Watch Dogs, right?
It's strange how that is when we think of Ubisoft and you think, what's their biggest thing for tomorrow? Watch Dogs. Well, actually, no, really, the biggest thing is Assassin's Creed 4. Okay. Well, no, think about it. Watch Dogs is a new IP. It looks really interesting, but Assassin's Creed is the series that brings the money into Ubisoft. It really is, because I mean, Assassin's Creed every year sells 12 to 13 million copies, and it's only ever outdone by the odd occasional release of GTA and Call of Duty. And when the Assassin's Creed started, everybody was like, we don't even know if we're going to do a sequel for it. 5 years later, we're talking about, 5-6 years later, we're talking about Assassin's Creed 4, and we're talking about a series that's selling 10 to 12 million with each new game.
Sequel.
Yeah. But I will say this in defence of Ubisoft, and the Assassin's Creed series, and I still maintain this, is that, again, they are doing yearly sequels, but it is worth pointing out that those sequels are years in development. It's just because we see them release every year, we don't know too much about what goes on behind closed doors at Ubisoft. But each Assassin's Creed game is completely different from the last one, and it's different enough to warrant spending the money to buy the new one, but also to actually put the time investment in as a gamer. You definitely get your 30 to 40 hours worth of gameplay out of it. So I think the problem with this year's Assassin's Creed, before we go on to the Watch Dogs stuff, is that there's too many versions of it. You got the PS3 version, you got the PS4 version. Ubisoft is sort of saying, the definitive version is going to be a PS4, and it causes some conflict there. So I'm kind of curious how Ubisoft are going to deal with that. I'm also curious about the future of Assassin's Creed on PS Vita, because I wrote a review last year for Assassin's Creed Liberation. I still maintain it's probably one of the better AAA titles on PlayStation Vita that you can get. And yet, we're talking Assassin's Creed 4 here, but we've still not really heard much about whether or not we're going to get another Assassin's on Vita. So I'm curious to see if Ubisoft will address that tomorrow. Definitely be interesting.
Yeah. Watch Dogs.
Watch Dogs. Yeah. Still my most anticipated game for this year, I think. And,
okay. Not on my buy list, but it's definitely it's right. I told you it's right on the edge. It's probably like next to fall onto the list of must-gets. Yeah. It's like right off it.
The second tier of must-gets, yeah. I know what you're saying. But, no, I'm really excited for this. We should point out that, GTA Man did write an article for us, and I think he made a fair point in it. As with any open-world game, the tendency is that it will always be compared to GTA. Assassin's Creed is different enough that you can get away with it because it's got that whole historical mythology stuff, so people kind of forget it when comparing open world games to GTA. But Watch Dogs is kind of the modern setting, the hacking gameplay elements, the driving the cars, the going into buildings, fighting with people. So there's obviously going to be that comparison with GTA, and I think it's right to kind of be worried a little bit about it, because as what GTA was essentially saying was that you've got something like Saints Row, which has to go over the top crazy to stand out, and it doesn't always work, to the point of where they have to get media response by saying, well, look, you can buy our game and you can beat people up with a huge purple dildo, as a selling point of the game, and so it detracts a little bit from what the Saints Row team are trying to do. And then on, from the Watch Dogs side of it, is whether or not the gameplay is going to be, unique enough but not too far out. So it'll be unique to stand out from the kind of GTA 5 gameplay that you would expect, but it's also going to stand out without having the need to use props like big purple dildos. And I think it's kind of right to be worried about that. But I think there's enough substance there within. I can see what the development team behind Watch Dogs are really going for, and I'm kind of curious. And I've said this to you before with Watch Dogs. I'm kind of curious about this other AR integration with it. I think that's probably what is going to make Watch Dogs stand out. The whole QR code system. You scan your phone, you hold your phone up to TV, you scan a QR code, and you may get I don't know, a free bit of DLC or something. Whatever Ubisoft plans to do with that, I think, is certainly going to be interesting. But I'm kind of intrigued by the whole connectivity world, because I think it's very relatable to modern times as well as we've often talked about technology going forward and forward and forward, and it's kind of nice to play an open world sort of open playground thing where you can see today's world influencing it a little bit and where we could potentially go with it, and having a free roam open playground for that, I think, is pretty cool.
Okay.
So I ranted on a little bit. I was waiting for you to say, no, I agree, no, I disagree.
I'm kind of I'm very intrigued by the gameplay. It's just I think it's one of those ones I need to know a little bit more. I need to see it, and because I didn't really I don't really make the GTA connection. But no, I don't know that I do. I mean, open world is open world.
Yeah, but every open world game is compared to GTA. It's fact.
Well, there was open world. There's been open world.
Yeah, but I'm going to say it's been like that since PS2. I mean, even Red Dead Redemption was compared to GTA. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they didn't invent open world.
No, but they set the benchmark for it.
It's just a matter of, like, I think, when you have something that's like city environment, open world, where you can do a lot of different things, like you said, going in buildings, but then drive a car and all that other stuff. I think that the mechanics of that, yeah, I don't know, maybe people are pretty used to it from playing GTA, but it doesn't,
No, but the point I was trying to make is that GTA is the benchmark.
Well, yeah, I mean, and from that reason, probably Watch Dogs doesn't strike me as very unique in that regard, but at the same time, like, I want to see something like, you know, the only reason to play a game is unique gameplay or new concept, interesting storyline. I don't want to take something and just say, well, you know, it's kind of a lot like GTA, and say, oh, well, that means I should play it.
Yeah, it should never be a selling point. Let's put it that way. It shouldn't be, well, you should play our game because it's like GTA. No, I shouldn't. I should be playing that game because, as you say, it has the unique concepts and stuff, but it's not done in a far out way that seems to be over the top.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I think, you know, some people don't. That's why I think the Saints Row series is kind of a love it or hate it. Because you either love the craziness and the far outness of the, you know, the uniqueness it's trying to put on there, or you dislike it because it goes way too far.
Yeah.
And it doesn't focus on its strengths. Do you see what I mean? I think that's what, you know, Ubisoft are doing with Watch Dogs in some respects, is that, yeah, they're saying, you know, this is going to be kind of this GTA-esque things, but, you know, ignore that for just a minute. There's going to be some really unique concepts to the game, and they're relatable, and they're not far out, and they're not crazy. So it'll warm to people will warm to it, and I think, you know, that's probably the right way for Ubisoft to approach it, same way as they did with the first Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah.
But I think Ubisoft also have some other interesting projects as well. Obviously, Rayman Legends is coming. I'm intrigued to see how the whole it's not being Wii U exclusive anymore is going to affect what the final product is, because, you know, prior to the Wii U's announcement, one of the big things was Rayman Legends and this ability to you know, put things on the Wii U gamepad and it would scan it into the game. They've obviously scrapped that, but have they done something to, you know, replace that and make it more unique? I know they're doing some cool things with the Vita version of that we saw this week. So, but in terms of overall, I think, you know, Ubisoft is still very much an unknown quantity in terms of things, because we know about, obviously, the big games, say Rayman, Assassin's Creed, obviously Watch Dogs, but, you know, what about the things like Rainbow Six? Patriots, we haven't really seen much on that for the last couple of years. Are we going to get a new Ghost Recon? Still one of my favourite.
Used to play all the hell out of those too.
yeah. So it'd be interesting to see if Ubisoft do that, but it'll also be interesting to see what comes through on Ubisoft.
I've totally forgotten about that completely. But I used to play. I used to love those games, man. I played the hell out of them. Back when I was like purely SOCOM.
Yeah.
Call of Duty, what? Never heard of it.
In the good days. But I'm also curious to see what Ubisoft have got on their indie slate, you know, because last year we saw some games like From Dust and some other kinds of things, and, you know, I'm curious to see, you know, certainly from Ubisoft, more about games like Flashback HD, which are a remake of the original Flashback game you may remember from Amiga and Commodore days, and they're also looking at Fade to Black HD, so I think that's be cool. I think the biggest surprise that will come out of Ubisoft's press conference tomorrow, because, as I say, we already know about the big titles, is whether or not we'll get a new Prince of Persia. You know, we still don't really know what's happening with that series. We know, obviously, Blacklist, Splinter Cell Blacklist is coming out, and we'll probably see quite a lot of footage of that tomorrow, but we want to know about Prince of Persia. I think, are we going to see a next-gen Prince of Persia? That's what I really want to know from Ubisoft.
Yeah. So we got Microsoft, EA, Ubisoft, Sony. No Nintendo announcements.
Well, I think, to be honest with you, the two other publishers we should probably look at is obviously Activision and Sony, because really, I want to talk about Microsoft games, but we just don't know enough about. There's not enough of their games to actually talk about that make an impact.
Yeah. We're talking. We got exposed to Call of Duty Ghosts. What was the other one we got exposed to? That's going to be the TV. That whole part of that conference was just like, what is this
Quantum
about?
something. Was it Quantum Break or something?
Yeah, something like
Which
that.
is from the guys behind things, but again, we still don't
Little
really
girl
know enough
touches a
about.
person's ear and causes a boat to
Yeah.
crash into a bridge.
Yeah. And then obviously we know Forza 5's coming, but that's pretty bog standard. It's just another Forza game. So what more can we say about Forza that isn't already?
Do those sell well? I mean, Ford doesn't seem like something people like seem very hyped
Yeah,
about.
it still doesn't do GT numbers, put it that way, but it does sell. It's still a very popular series, but
Okay.
there's an unfair rivalry going on there because Forza 5 is an arcade racer that's trying to get serious, whereas when you look at Gran Turismo, you're talking about the real driving simulator. There's a reason it's called the real driving simulator because it doesn't focus on the arcade thing. There are arcade modes in there, but the whole idea is to give you as close to driving
Experience, yeah.
experience as you can.
And we know the creator's like obsessive compulsive and
Yeah. So, but
anyway.
well, I'll tell you what. Let's talk Activision.
Activision.
Then,
I've heard of
to
them.
round up the show, we'll cover some of the stuff from Sony, the games they've already announced, what we're hoping to see, and where we think some surprises might come from. So Activision. Obviously, we know about Destiny. It's going to be. We're going to see the world's first live gameplay at Sony press conference.
Yep. Make sure everybody's aware, kind of the steps of that. So Bungie is now Activision's.
Kind of. No, they're still independent.
They made Halo. They're no longer making Halo.
Yeah.
Destiny looks to be totally different. Doesn't look to be like next generation Halo or anything. What do you think? You could see Halo influence in it?
Well, I'm curious about how the whole Bungie Activision relationship works. I mean, I know I've got a funny feeling. I already said at the beginning of the show, I'm interested enough in Destiny to really want to sort of tune in and get excited about that. I'm curious about the relationship that Bungie have with Activision because you said obviously that Bungie's main bread and butter has always been Halo. But Bungie are an independent studio. They sign exclusivity contracts to work on projects for 10 years, but once the 10 years with Microsoft was up, that's why they went to Activision. And then after 10 years is up with Activision, they can go and make their own games. But I'm curious as to how much influence Activision's going to have and whether or not it'll be the same kind of relationship that they had with Microsoft. Because one of the reasons Bungie left Microsoft was that Microsoft were making too many demands of them, and so it was causing some issues with artistic integrity. I'm curious as to whether or not Activision are going to allow that to affect the quality of Destiny. Or maybe I'm just thinking about it too much, but I think Destiny. It's hard to say because let's be honest here. Bungie haven't made a flop of a game. They haven't made the greatest quality Halo games. I mean, some of the Halo games have been questionable under Bungie stewardship, but they've still sold through the bucket loads. And I think this is really Bungie's time to show that they can
do something new,
produce quality consistently, without someone like Microsoft going, well, we need a Bungie this year because we have nothing. I don't know. I'm ignoring that. I'm kind of giving Activision a bit of a free pass on this. I'm going to ignore all that background crap that could happen because I think the concept and the innovation that Destiny promises could be fantastic and really could be a shot in the arm for Activision in terms of revenue, so they're not having to rely on Call of Duty all the time, so that when that inevitable Call of Duty bubble bursts, that Activision still have a quality product left at the end of it. Because let's be honest, if Activision went bust tomorrow, we'd all be screwed as an industry, I think. Well, no, think about it. Activision publish, a hell of a lot of games every year for all different markets. They go bust. A lot of games disappear off the shelves very,
I think
very
they'll be
quickly.
okay though.
Oh no, I'm just saying hypothetically, but but I think Bungie's going to be obviously Activision's main.
Well,
show
this is just a whole new IP, whole new thing for them. It's a whole new step. So, you know, it's one thing you have Halo and it was successful, and then you just keep making sequels.
Yeah.
You know, you just wonder about them being able to change gears with so much going on with, you know.
Yeah, I think the Activision press conference is going to be interesting tomorrow because, you know, we have the Destiny stuff. You know, during the week we have the Destiny stuff. We have the obviously Call of Duty stuff. Then there's obviously Diablo 3 from Blizzard as part of the Activision setup. So, you know, there's obviously going to be a lot of promotion, a lot of talk about that. But then when you sort of look past those 3 games, you're kind of thinking, well, what else is going to come from Activision that we don't already know about? You know, are we going to get, for example, a new James Bond game? Is it going to be good? For starters. But, you know, Activision...
Not glitched, Pete.
Yeah. But Activision usually are the ones that give us lots of surprises because they kind of have 2 or 3 major titles that they show off at numerous, you know, manufacturers things, and then when it comes to talking about their own games, they sort of then start pushing out, you know, budget titles. They start talking about them. They talk about mid-tier price titles, and then obviously the top tier ones. So I don't know, I think we'll actually see a lot of surprises from Activision, even if they're games that we don't necessarily want to buy because they're just like crappy kids games or something, but I still think we'll see a lot of surprises from them. Who knows, we could be pleasantly surprised and see an announcement of a fantastic game that isn't Bungie's Destiny or Call of Duty Ghosts. I think Activision's probably going to be the one to watch, I think, with all of that in mind.
Let's see, Daryl was telling me about a list that was leaked of some of the games and stuff like that were going to be...
yeah, let's sort that. Let's have a look at that first before we go into the Sony stuff.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what... he didn't actually give me the list. I was trying to remember what we talked about, but... I don't know. Destiny... Oh, Skylanders. There was isn't there another Skylanders title coming out?
Yeah, we've known about that for some time, actually. I don't think E3 is going to really set the world on fire with Skylanders. I think, you know, I think that's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow for Activision. It's nice to see them actually supporting it as well, in a proper way. I'd recommend, if you want to know more info about that, you actually check out Garcia's article on the forums, because it's got literally all the information you could possibly want. So if you're a Skylanders fan,
he's a huge fan.
You can't wait, and you can't wait till Activision's press conference, do go and read his article.
I don't know. Maybe they'll tell us about how the fish have AI. It's important for fish to have AI and swim out of your way when you swim up to them.
Yes. Because the last thing you want when you're shooting people underwater is a fish getting in your sights.
That's right.
Damn you, pesky fish. So yeah, well, if you can't remember the list, then I suppose we should just, you know, go into the end of this, which is Sony.
Sony, I've heard of them.
3 consoles to promote: PS Vita, PS3, PS4. We know that Sony have already said they've got over 40 games to show off during their press conference. Do you think we're going to see a typical Sony press conference where they rant on about sales stats again? Because it's always puzzled me every year with Sony E3 press conferences. It's like you get really excited in the build-up to it, right? And then they spend like the first half an hour like teasing the odd little game here and there, but they spend the first half an hour going, yes, we're really successful in Asia, yes, we're really successful in Japan, yes, this console's selling this much, yes, that console... Do you know what I mean, Dave? Do you find that distracting from the whole...
Hopefully they've learned, but we've already, as we've said many times before, we already know that they're not the best at putting their best foot forward and advertising and...
But I think more, I think at this moment in time, I think it's safe to say that realistically Sony can't put a foot wrong. You know, they'd have to do something dramatically bad to put a foot wrong. So I'm kind of hoping they'll use that as a launch pad to really step it up and actually come out and say, you know, we've only got an hour and a half, but we're going to show you as much as we possibly can.
I think that they need to not go so game crazy either, because, you know, as much as we'd like to see a whole bunch of the games, there's still a lot of questions about The PS4.
I don't know. I think I
What about the share button? Let's see the share button and you know.
I think they will. I think they'll cover that.
The camera and they've got a lot to cover really. I mean you know, as much as we can say Sony has missed, or I mean Microsoft has misstepped, Sony still, there's still a lot of, as good as we thought their conference was compared, there's still a lot of questions. You know, they've got to reveal what it looks like.
Yeah.
We want to know about the share button. You know, we want to hear about the, you know, now there's questions about the digital rights management and how that's going to work.
Don't we already know about the share button? And they still don't get the questions about digital rights management either.
You're saying that, but you're forgetting the whole thing about, like, the whole, what I was making a point about before is E3 is the time to talk to gamers, and you got to handle it like a person hasn't seen the other things.
Yes,
They haven't gone to your site to see any of your pre-E3 reveal videos. They haven't seen the last press conference.
You know, even as non-Xbox owners, we sat there, you know, during the entire Microsoft press conference, we watched it and we went, you know, some of this is actually quite cool, but where are the games, you know? And that was the universal cry, the outcome of it. Where were the games?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Sony's got to do all of it. They've got to do all the games, and they've got those reveals.
Games, you know, and I think that's going to be core to having a successful presentation for them tomorrow. I think they need to show us games in abundance. I certainly think the PS Vita needs to be pushed to the forefront because God knows I need some support. I mean, we already know that he's going to get some support in terms of the fact that it's now mandatory that every PS4 game that doesn't use the PS4i will have to be programmed to stream to the PS Vita, which I think is a fantastic thing for Sony to actually put in their policies and processes to make that mandatory. If you're coding a game for PS4, it has to be streamed to the Vita unless it uses the camera technology. You know, and I want them to just push on from that and say, you know, so yes, you can stream all these PS4 and PS3 games to your Vita, but it's going to get even better, because if you don't necessarily want to do that and you want to keep those sort of experiences as a purely console exclusive experience, the Vita's got its own exclusive games. Let's show people what the Vita can really do. And I think, you know, it's going to be important for Sony to really champion the Vita this time around, because, you know, it's been, what, a year and a half now, and, you know, the Vita still hasn't really fulfilled its potential, and yet it's got so much potential, and yet the sales figures aren't reflecting it. And
I don't know, everything you're telling me says that Sony's got their work cut out for them.
I don't think they have
40 new games. Okay, all the consoles. Microsoft doesn't have that kind of pressure. They have the actual reveal of what it looks like still. You're talking about the share button. You're talking about still, you know, all these questions that have come up about, you know, digital rights management. And even the camera and thing, how does that work? And I don't know how they're going to do it. They're going to be crammed full of stuff.
See, I think
to do it right.
Questions about digital rights management during the Sony press conference, then, you know, in some respect you're watching it for the wrong reasons, because Sony have clarified what the issue is with digital rights management. They've already come out on record before E3, you know, when all this is kicking off with Microsoft, and said, we will not have any active DRM in our system. We will leave this up to the publishers should they want to continue with things like online passes and stuff, but we will not actively force DRM upon people as part of our system. And they have gone on record saying that, so that should clear that up straight away. There's no need for them to go down spend any time during a press conference talking about DRM.
I'm just saying that I don't think people you give people too much credit for going and looking at how all these things work. And you know, E3 is the time for gamers, and you're right, they're going to want to hear about all these games. But then Sony's got a bigger challenge with, you know, the Vita, having an extra console in there to, you know, plug. And then you've got all the, you know, abundance of games. 40 games is a lot. you know.
As long as they're 40 excellent games, then I can live with
Yeah,
that.
but how do you fit that into the time limit and then answer all these other questions? I want to see how the share works. I want to see
Well, I don't actually know how
the
long
camera works. I want to know, is it going to have the same kind of things? You know, and especially after the Microsoft, people are going to be wondering more and more, don't you think, about how that fits in with their living room? They're going to want to know, does Sony do any of the same kind of things? You know,
Yeah, but
at this
I
point,
think
does the camera have any controls for your motion? Does it have anything for your voice?
I think you're being a little bit too skeptical about whether or not Sony can pull it off, because let's be honest, have been other E3s where, you know, Sony have still had to deal with three consoles, PS2, PS3.
Yeah,
PSP,
but you were just talking about how we're very successful in the Asian market. We're very successful.
No, but let me finish. Right, but that's my point. They've still been able to throw in, you know, talk about three consoles and new features such as PS Move and stuff. They've still been able to show sales stats and functionalities of consoles as well. And to top it all off, in most years we've actually seen a lot more than 40 games from Sony during a press conference.
I think they better hit the ground running.
Well, I mean, all I'll say to you is you underestimate how long Sony's press conferences are, because they're usually 2 hours plus.
This one's going to be...
If they've got 40 games,
crammed.
They'll just cut out the crap about sales, yeah, and just talk about games, and functionality. And I think that's great if they do that, because they're onto a winner then. And you know, I genuinely cannot see Sony going wrong with this. I mean, as far as I'm concerned now, right, even if the PS4 was just a pyramid, you know, like a cube or something, you know, I genuinely at this point do not care about the design, because I'm already
as long as it doesn't look like a
see,
1980s VCR, we'll be alright.
Yeah, like a Betamax or something, but yeah. But even if it did look like a Betamax, well, you know, Sony did design the original Betamax, so it's their prerogative. But my point is that Sony have gone about this over the last couple of months very cleverly, to the point of where they've got people excited, and all they've done is shown between 5 and 10 potential games, talked a little bit about functionality and showed a controller off. Do you know what I mean? And it's caused everybody, you know, other competitors in the industry to really start flapping about and getting things so wrong. And, you know, it's got gamers questioning, you know, it's got gamers from other consoles, you know, gamers who own other consoles questioning their next purchase. But it's, at the same time, it's also, you know, a lot of people that already own Sony systems are saying, you know, I want that PS4. And, you know, nothing that Microsoft or Nintendo are going to do at this moment in time are going to change my mind. And if they're doing that without even having shown the console, I think we're in for an exciting day tomorrow from Sony. I really do. Because the question then begs, what other surprises are up their sleeves? Because I can't see them doing anything negative.
I just think there's a lot of stuff that they need to speak to. I really do. I think you're looking at people get too many answers outside of E3, and I don't think that's the case. I think E3 is the time to address all of it, and they need to address all of it, and they need to get their act together with advertising. We've said this before, but you know, I mean,
I will say this though: Sony have, you know, done that with the PS4 already, in terms of they're actively advertising it without an image of the console. And, you know, without a launch date or price, and they're already advertising the PS4, you know. Certainly in football matches here, it's been all over the stadiums, you know, in the billboards.
I'm going to be listening very carefully. I want to hear certain things. Even if they don't know yet. Well, the Gaikai service, is it going to have backwards compatibility? That's still way up in the air.
Exactly what you're going to be listening for, which is, where is the turn off social media button?
Yes.
Exactly,
is that integrated?
That's all you care about.
Well, do you know how the share button works exactly? No. Do most gamers? No.
Yep.
No, you don't.
Unlike most gamers I was watching in February. And yes, I know how the share button works.
No.
You press the share button and then it brings up a set of menus allowing you to share stuff.
Oh, okay.
It's not overly complicated. If it was overly complicated, I'm pretty certain they wouldn't have put a share button in there in the first place. And even now, I know what you're saying about gamers not necessarily going out and looking for answers to their questions, but at the same time, you know, Sony have done enough with their partners to explain how easy some of these new things are to use on the control pad, like the touchpad and the share button and stuff.
It's easy. Trust us. Buy our console. No. How does it work? What's it going to cost? What's it look like?
Well, share
what games are going to be on it? I'm just saying. I think that as a consumer, I think more people want to. You want to see all this stuff. They want to see it in action. They want to see. It's like if you couldn't convince people to buy, you could tell them everything how it works and say, you won't know until you open the box what it looks like.
I'd actually be all for that. I think it'd be quite unique.
You would sell very little.
I think you'd sell a lot more. You'd be surprised at how curiosity drives sales.
Yeah.
You do. Look at all those games that people buy that are second-hand and stuff. Where they see them on the shelf and they think, "I've never heard of this one. I'm going to buy it because I'm curious to see what happens, to see what the game is."
Okay.
It happens, and it is a big sales driver. You'd be surprised, honestly.
Okay.
I think if Sony came out and said, "Well, we're still not going to tell you. You're just going to have to wait until you buy it." I think that'd actually set pre-orders on fire. I think personally, but we know Sony aren't going to do it. I just don't think Sony are going to turn up and have a bad press conference tomorrow.
No, I just think they've got their work cut out for them. They have a lot to address. It's like in my mind, Microsoft has a lot to answer to.
Yeah,
with their controversies, and Sony, it seems like they're just overloaded with, like, they've got a lot to cover and cram into, and as a gamer and someone looking to buy their console and their games, and with PS3, PS4, the split now with some games are going to be available on both, and price point not being known, all these things, I don't know.
I don't want to put
jam-packed
spin on it, but look at it from Sony's perspective, right? They've looked at all the negativity that's come out over since they initially started the ball rolling with the announcement of the PS4. They've looked at all that negativity, and and in those months they've been planning for E3. Microsoft, let's be honest, are on the back foot. Really, they're in damage control mode. They could come out tomorrow and announce a ton of exclusives, and it still won't make a difference because there's still, as you mentioned, a lot of questions that Microsoft need to answer for. So if you're Sony, you could show up to E3 and do the bare basic minimum, or do you really want to come out for once and actually start fighting, knock a ball out of the park? Because let's be honest, when the PS3 came out, they didn't do that. And they still continue to not do that, where they don't champion the PS3 for the system it should be, and they've managed to get by on it, and they're only just starting to reap the rewards of starting to do that more and more now these days. They're only starting to reap the rewards to the point of where now PS3 sales are overtaking 360. With the PS4, do they really want to go through another 6-year period where they're struggling for sales and struggling against competition? No, of course not. They're going to want to come out fighting. If that means overloading your E3 conference with a ton of games that's just going to astound and wow people, I'm all for that. I think it's about time that, because the PS3 got a lot of unfair, negative press when it came out for absolutely no reason other than, numerous fanboyisms and flame wars that were going on at the time, and I would really like to see the PS4 get a kickstart it deserves, rather than it coming out with a sort of flaccid bang, because that's essentially what the PS3 got. It came out with a flaccid bang, and it's taken so many years to actually really see the potential of it. And I think Sony are clued up enough to know that they need to tell people and promote and really sell the potential of PS4 day one, not slowly build it up.
It'll be interesting to see if that happens. You take 2 hours and take 40 games. What is that? 2.5 minutes.
Tell you what, if they showed 2.5 minutes of every game, I'd be happy.
Yeah, but then they also have to show the console and.
Who cares about the PS4?
Who cares about the Vita?
Like,
right? Who cares about it? Don't need to show any of that stuff. Don't need to show any games on it.
Who cares what the console looks like it? As long as it plays games and the games look fantastic and it's not going to cost the world.
Who cares what their share button is? It's got it on there. You can look elsewhere and find out how it works. They should just come out and say that. Look, we have stuff posted everywhere. You can go find out. You can find out about new games. We'll put the trailers and stuff, footage on, our websites. Thank you. Goodbye.
Do you think tomorrow that we may see some surprise announcements?
We have no
'Cause
plans for
already
advertising.
know that, we know there's a bunch of games already announced for both, PS3, PS4, PS Vita, but, where do you think the surprises come from? We already know that Sony Santa Monica are actually bringing a new game to E3 to show off tomorrow. So I'm kind of excited about that, because that could either mean there's another God of War, or it could mean that it's something completely out of left field that we never imagined, and we know Sony Santa Monica are a great studio for doing that kind of thing, so that'll be interesting. But what about Uncharted 4? Because we still haven't really heard much from Naughty Dog about what's going to happen now they've wrapped up production on The Last of Us.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be excited for an Uncharted 4?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was expecting a bit more than 3 words, but okay.
Yeah, well, I thought they were going to move away from it completely.
Yeah.
And I got the feeling that they were going to take it in a new direction and do some other IPs, but I hadn't heard anything about an Uncharted 4.
Yeah.
But
I was just saying, do you think we'll see that? And, we'll also, I'm just curious as to whether or not we'll actually finally get to see Guerrilla Games' new IP. Are you not intrigued by that? Because we've been talking about that for years, and we know they've got, obviously, Killzone Shadowfall, we know they've got Killzone Mercenary, but Guerrilla Games is still adamant they are working on other games. Yet we still haven't seen or heard from them. So do you think tomorrow might be the day that we actually finally find out what else Guerrilla Games are working on?
I don't know. There's a lot of things I'm wondering at this point. You think we'll hear a price point? How about that?
Probably not. I think they'll probably wait to Gamescom to announce that, which is about August time. I think they'll want to generate. I think they'll want to monitor the feedback on that first and foremost. I really do. Feedback on the design, the feedback on things like hard drive specs and stuff. Because while we do know quite a bit about specs-wise PS4, the more pivotal points of it, we don't quite know. We don't know if it will support solid state memory or whether it be a normal hard drive, how big that hard drive is going to be, etc, etc. So there's still some things they need to clarify with that, and I'm sure they'll do that over the course of their press conference as well. So, it'll be interesting to see with that. I'm curious to see whether or not we'll hear anything about the status of The Agent, the Rockstar exclusive. Really want to know more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I think it's about time that we knew more about that. And Final Fantasy Versus 13.
Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions. A lot of stuff.
Yeah. I'm just.
What about
the last guy?
Do you think Gaikai will get backwards compatibility? Have you been reading that, and have you followed that? And
I don't want to speculate on how that works, because I'm kind of keeping an open mind with it.
It seems like that's like a paramount thing to the streaming service.
Well, I'm gonna just put Mark 2 Pennyworth in there. I know there's going to be people that disagree with me. I genuinely do not care about backwards compatibility for my PS4, and the reason being is I'm not getting rid of my PS3 anytime soon. If Gaikai offers me the chance to stream my PS3, PS4 games, PS3 games and stuff to my PS4, that's great. But if I have to pay a fee for that, I'm not sure I'd be comfortable with that. And if so, all I have to do is turn my PS3 on, and still play my content.
Yeah, but if you buy a PS4 and you get backwards compatibility, and it somehow works with if you've already purchased it, which we don't know, as you said, if you had to pay a fee or whatever. But then aren't you getting an extra system? Wouldn't you have a PS3 that you could then have a friend play on?
Well, but the thing is, there's too many unanswered questions with regards to Gaikai's implementation that it's too early to even start picking holes in it. All we know at this point is that Gaikai is a streaming service and that they will be looking to offer some kind of backwards compatibility. As far as I'm concerned, I'm quite happy with those answers at the moment. I remain to sort of be skeptical, but also optimistic at the same time.
Well, do you think that would be
would
that be a big win over Microsoft, who's got no option? It's definitely not backwards compatible, and
yeah, I think that
because if you're going to buy a new console and it's like, well, I can just go buy a PS4, I can still buy my play my PS3 games, whereas an Xbox 360 owner, I don't.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's that would be a huge thing for them to come out and say, and especially if it was free or it had some kind of integration into PlayStation Plus as well. Because,
PlayStation
again,
Plus.
that's another one. I think PlayStation Plus is a fantastic service. We all know that, and it's the same with the Gaikai thing. I think people that have used Gaikai in the past know that Gaikai offers a fantastic service, which is one of the reasons that Sony looked to buy the company in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But they are fantastic services. They've got great reputations, but are we at a point where we can start questioning it? I don't think we are yet, which is why I don't think it necessarily should matter as to whether or not it constitutes your decision to buy the console or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because essentially, and it comes back to what Sony have been doing all along, which is, championing the games, making it simple, a friendly, socialised UI system, fixing the problems that PS3 has, and the concentrations on that, and rightly so, and then things like Gaikai and the PlayStation Plus implementation into PS4 are just going to be added bonuses for us as consumers, really. Because at the end of the day, we're not buying a system based on whether or not Gaikai is brilliant or whether or not PlayStation Plus is brilliant. We're buying it purely for what the system has to offer in terms of games and the kind of interactive entertainment side of things, more than those kinds of things. And I think that's important to remember, which is why I don't particularly want to go all nitpicky on Gaikai and PlayStation Plus. I'm sure I could do, given enough time, but I don't know. I'm kind of waiting with bated breath. I'm kind of excited to see where Sony take PlayStation Plus, though. I will say that. We just recently found out what the new games in the Instant Game Collection are this month.
Oh, so you expect them to talk about PlayStation Plus?
Well, they've already said they will do, because they don't
have time. They don't have time.
They will have time. Shut up, here. Goading me on.
We'll see.
They'll have plenty of time. I've never known Sony get to the end of a 2.5-hour press conference and go, oh wait, but there's more. You know what I mean? We haven't had time to talk about it. No, they always have time, and they are pretty well managed with it. So.
Okay.
I think I sort of just want to make
have
this
more
clear.
faith in them and as a company to.
Well, I kind of have to. I have invested
to tout their their hard-earned successes, and they haven't in the past, and I agree with you, and I think that speaks to the way that they'll probably go forward with this, and it's the same with advertising.
Yeah.
They need to get their crap together. They really do.
And I mean,
show us, tell us, demonstrate it, show some videos, do this, just crank through it and show all this great stuff the entire time. I don't want to hear about sales figures. I don't want to have, somebody that doesn't even speak English that's translated and whatever. I don't,
Oh no, I'm happy for that if it's funny.
Do it.
Get somebody from Konami or Temco to come across. That'd be quite funny. But no, the thing is, ignoring the bias for a moment, because it'd be stupid of us to say that we're not kind of biased towards Sony press conference, being excited about it. But I think, just put it in perspective for just a second, when I know you're quite skeptical about the whole thing, but you look at Sony tomorrow and you think 40 games, they've got 3 systems to talk about, they've got all these services, as you mentioned, Gaikai, obviously PlayStation Plus, we've got all these games, and the thing is, we know about some of these games, and yet we're still excited for them. We know that Destiny's going to be showing off. We know that things like Killzone, Shadowfall, and Infamous Second Son are all going to be showing off during the course of the show. But we're also going to be treated for some nice surprises as well. We've got Square Enix said they're going to reveal more about the future of Final Fantasy during Sony's press conference, and we've got all the other stuff like partnerships with EA, because there's usually some kind of EA surprise in there as well. And we already know that Activision have sort of cozied up to Sony a bit more with exclusive content for Destiny and things like that. So I think if you were going to look at all the E3s that have gone over the last couple of years and all the different publishers and manufacturers press conferences, I don't think there has ever been a particular 2.5 hour period that I've actually felt really excited to go and see what they have to offer, because there's just so much. And I know you're saying that's a negative thing, but I actually think that's more of a positive thing, because quite often what we've found in previous years is we've gone, well, yes, there was a load of content there, but it was lackluster. It's like nobody cared. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this could be the year that we, regardless of whether you're a 360 owner or a PlayStation owner or whatever, everybody's going to be looking at what Sony's doing. That's the way the position is at the moment, the momentum is. And I think for that reason alone, if you miss that tomorrow, you're going to be a fool, because I think you really are in for a treat tomorrow, no matter how sceptical you are. And I think that's what's going to make E3 2013.
Okay.
Should probably end it on that, because I don't know what we're like for time at the moment.
I don't either. But you want to do the schedule? Do you have the schedule anywhere? We can just call out the schedule real quick. And
I don't have it to hand, but if you want to talk some filler for a minute, I can find it.
Okay. Well, I just know that, we've got our time differences. I don't know. Let's see. Just going to see if I can look it up on my phone so I don't kill our bandwidth.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, I do have the schedule.
Of course,
here
it started today. The Ghost started today, officially.
Yeah. So, I'm going to give these... Right, these are all in Pacific time, so people can work back from these. Yeah, because unfortunately they give us Pacific time, I'm not sure why, but Microsoft's press conference is tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time.
Could that be 12:30 Eastern?
Yep. And I'm not quite sure that is in the UK, but we can obviously, look at putting something up on the site for that. You've then got EA at 1 p.m. Pacific time.
Okay, it's 4 p.m. Eastern.
Ubisoft will be at 3 p.m.
6 p.m. Eastern.
And then Sony will be at 6 p.m. Pacific time.
And 9 p.m. Eastern.
Yes.
So late here and much later for you.
Yeah. I know the Sony one will be, the pre-show starts at 1:30 in the morning, and then the main event goes on at 2 a.m. So, but that's fine, because as I say, we will have a special episode of the PodStation, which is fine. I'll be awake, juiced up, ready to go, and say a lot of "I told you so's" as well.
So that'll be early in the morning for you. What time will it be when it's over?
Probably about 4 a.m., maybe 4:30. But it's cool. Like, as I say, I've planned my schedule out, so it's all good. But I will just say for this, if anybody is wanting to know about the Nintendo stuff, the Nintendo don't actually have a press conference this year. However, they are doing a Nintendo Direct stream, which you can access, and that's 7 a.m. on the Tuesday.
7 a.m. Pacific?
7 a.m. Pacific.
Okay, that'd be 10 a.m. Eastern.
Yep, and if you're a Pokemon fan, they will also be holding a Pokemon XY panel at 6 p.m. Pacific time.
9 p.m.
And that's all your Nintendo stuff.
And again, that's on Tuesday, June 11th.
Yeah, Tuesday. Now, obviously, there are press conferences in between that. People like Konami, Atlas, NIS, Bethesda, and many more. So, but I'll try and get some sort of thing put up on the site during the week to try and cover that. So do keep your eyes peeled for that. I'll get some timetables.
We should do a variety of polls too, and see like what games people like out of each.
Yeah.
I think that'd be cool to do. Do each press conference, list out the games, and then have people vote which one they thought.
Yep.
was the best
Seeing
announcement.
as KD's watching all of it, KD's going to hold some polls for you.
I'll hold some polls. We can do some polls. I like polls.
Build a tent with some
I like to
polls.
hear what people say and what people think.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see some of the reaction go on throughout the week and whether or not people are just as sceptical as you are or as positive and optimistic as I am.
As positive enough? Yeah, okay.
You know it's true. Yeah, so we should probably round up the show because I'm not sure how long we've been. But was there anything else that you wanted to add in just before we go? Or?
No. I look forward to seeing everyone. Make sure you catch some of the video feeds and everything that we make available. And give us some feedback to anything that you'd like to hear us discuss as we go forward and see E3 and report on it.
Yeah,
so feel free.
If there is any, I was going to say, if there is any content that you feel that we're not covering and you do want us to cover during E3, bloody tell us. Because there's nothing more frustration than somebody go, oh, well, why didn't you do anything about this? And it's like, well, you need to tell us.
Didn't say anything.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Tweet us, PM us. You obviously know the usual things. Twitter TrophiesonPSN. You can PM myself, IDP for Life, Buki Nushi, Garcia Fever. PM all those people and KD as well. If there's stuff that you want specifically covering, then we'll look at that and get that done for you. But pre-E3, I'm just not looking forward to Monday because of sleep.
All right, and we will see everybody then. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the PodStation, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Thank you.
Till then, bye.